Hi everyone, welcome to Infotactics. My name is Simon Dunn. I work for Mustard Marketing, who specialise in marketing for market research companies and deliverables. So today we're going to talk about infotactics. So essentially we're going to have a look at infographics and just sort of kind of disseminate them and work out exactly what they are, and then also look at actually how to create one with the help of a graphic designer. So I suppose the first question we need to answer is why infographics? Why is everyone so interested in infographics at the moment? Well, the world's a rapidly changing place, and of course the big question is whether research is keeping up. It's extremely difficult to absorb and retain large amounts of information, but we find that clients are still on the receiving end of sort of 100+ slide presentations. So nowadays it's generally accepted that everyone has dwindling attention spans, and it's certainly an increasingly visual environment. So we expect to be entertained, and we expect things to be accessible, and we expect things to be intuitive and easy. And I think that infographics will answer those demands. They found their place, and they're kind of a poster boy for the delivery of findings with more visual flair. So we know why we're interested in them, so what exactly are they? What's an infographic? Well, obviously the word is actually bandied around quite a lot at the moment. And a quick look on Wikipedia, we can see that they describe it as a graphical and visual representation of information, data and knowledge intended to present complex information quickly and clearly. I think the key phrase here is visual. It's created by someone who has a strong visual eye. Its slickness and the visual appeal of the graphic is the differentiating factor. So fundamentally, I think we can split infographics into two types. So they're types defined by me, so in no way official. But the first type is the holistic type. So this is where you have a single data set that's displayed in a beautiful way. So it's generally more skillful and time-consuming to create this kind of infographic. There's one here that we created, that Mustard created, showing a colour spectrum of market research companies. I've got a few other examples here. Another Keen as Mustard one showing the size of different research companies across the sector in 2010. Then we've got one, sort of the Garden Data blog is an extremely good source for information about infographics and for examples. This one compares China and US on several different factors. I absolutely love this one, David McCandless. It's a comparison of the time people spend watching television and the time it took to create Wikipedia. So very, very clear, straightforward, one data set, very simply presented but very impactful. And then Peter Orntoft, that probably people are very familiar with and have seen before. Again, if you were to present this, it would, on the slide, it would often just be a 4-bar bar chart, but he's obviously done it in a far more interesting and visual way. So our next type of infographic is a sequential infographic. So sequential infographics do tend to sort of lend themselves a bit more to sort of market research data. It's a collection of data charts really presented in a very visual and unified way. Usually it's a tool canvas that we extend to accommodate the content. As I say, market research data tends to drive towards this kind of sequential infographic, even though data journalist snobbery would kind of not really describe it as an infographic in the strict sense. Some examples of sequential infographics here. So we've got a comparison of different military capabilities across the world. This one's a beautiful infographic showing parks around the world. Again, they're effectively separate different charts, but they're presented in a really nicely unified visual way. So it's, it's really interesting to see the kind of strong branding coming through. One that we've created again for Vision Critical, showing people's perceptions of the Queen's Queen's Jubilee recently. And another one that we created showing is winter over in research land. Have we come out of the recession? So again, the visual theme here is springtime, but there's separate different bits of data that are actually being presented. So it's not a sort of true infographic in the classic sense. So we've defined our different infographics and what they are exactly. So how do I actually go about creating one? Well, there's a large number of ways of putting an infographic together, and obviously a lot depends on your technical know-how. So there's a lot of really good software available through your web browser via the internet. CartoDB is a classic example. You've got spatial-based or map-based information. It allows you to plot onto a map. This is actually animated as well. Unfortunately, you can't see it in the example here on screen. But it's showing Royal Navy movements in World War I. Streaks of light moving all around the seas of the world. So it's a really beautiful presentation. Google, as always, is extremely helpful. They provide Google Fusion tables, which allow you to clean up data and present it, and also Google Charts, which allow you to embed simple charts in a web page. And then moving on, there's Tableau, which is a sort of more basic way of presenting information, but obviously sort of quite a bit different from PowerPoint, and is obviously web-based. Also, we've got here datavisualization.ch, which is actually a very useful site that I've used that is basically a repository of different types of ways of presenting data and different software to do that. One thing to bear in mind with this site is that it's often program solutions, so you need some programming ability, usually JavaScript, HTML5, jQuery, that sort of thing. It's well worth a look. You've got to bear in mind that some of these big visualizations, that particularly the motion ones, are actually programs, so you need some kind of programming ability. But coming back to sort of the sequential infographics, within the research industry, as I said before, it suits sequential infographics more, and you'd use traditional design software. The example we have here, it's an infographic opened in Illustrator. So Illustrator is Adobe Illustrator is the classic one to create this kind of infographic. You get a PDF output or a JPEG to embed in websites and so forth. So as this is more relevant to us as market researchers, let's have a look in a little bit more detail about how to go about creating them. And what we need is a symbiosis. So unfortunately, most market researchers can't visualize. It's not their job. That's it's not what they're there to do or what we're there to do. So of course there are some hybrids, data journalists and data visualizers, who use the sort of software I mentioned earlier to tell a story visually. But when it comes to market research infographics, and us generally, we're talking about a union between a visual designer and a researcher. So our symbiotes need a visual flair on the part of the researcher and a designer who's reasonably adept with numbers and data. So there needs to be a little bit of a crossover between the two. So how do we go about creating this symbiosis between our researcher and our designer? Well, we go to the classic method for any design job. We create a brief. So this ensures that everyone working on the project has a clear understanding of what they're actually trying to do, which is obviously fundamental. So it shouldn't be long and complicated. It should be short, usually 2 pages, just created in Word, concise and clear. You find that working to a brief significantly improves the efficiency of the job, the creativity, and you're more likely to get the output that you want and expect. So try and answer some of these questions on screen. Obviously this presentation will be available after the presentation for you to look at, but just really think about, what does the designer need to know, what do I need to know to give the information to the designer that they need. So as I say, once you've created the creative brief, you then need to find your designer. So again, how do you find a designer? What do you do? How do you find these people? Well, you've got the choice of, obviously you can come to Keener's Mustard Marketing, or more, you've effectively got the choice between an agency or a freelancer. The agency is going to be a safer choice, but a freelancer will obviously be a more reasonable cost. So to find a freelancer, the best thing to do is look sort of via word of mouth. So ask around colleagues, friends, family, see if there's a designer that you know that you can actually get on board to help you with this. Obviously LinkedIn is an absolutely fantastic resource for finding new people, so you can always sort of look for designers through LinkedIn. And then obviously there's a lot of infographics available on infographic sites and showcases and so forth. So it's well worth looking at those, finding ones that you like, and then contacting the designer directly. So you do have to remember that you're looking for someone with the appropriate skills and experience. So you're looking for, you don't want to have someone who's used to designing websites, a web designer, and has no experience of infographics. So look at their portfolio. They should have some examples to show you. Ask them to talk through the work with you. You don't need to meet them. Ideally you would. You don't need to. With Skype and Google Hangouts, you can meet literally face-to-face almost, and share desktops and that sort of thing, so the technology's there. And try and get that relationship with the designer established before you actually start your first infographic. So you found your designer. Where do you start from now? You've got your designer lined up. So you start with pencil and paper. So you brainstorm the data with them, and obviously with your wider team as well, and come up with some conceptual stories and ideas that actually meet the creative brief you produced earlier. Try getting it down on paper, pencil and paper. Try not to use PowerPoint because that tends to limit you. It's easier just to sketch things out. Write out numbers and text to begin with. It's basically the designer's job to kind of flesh it out into structure. You'll find that if you're having to write paragraphs describing what you've drawn and create diagrams within the diagrams, you're going wrong, you're off track. You want to try and keep it as simple as possible. So stand back and think, what's the bare minimum I can show and still have a coherent story? Kind of remove all the fat from it and just delete and delete and delete till you get to the essence of your story. So what next? We've got pen and paper. Well, you discuss your pen and pencil ideas with the designer and ask them to get to work effectively. So you sit down back and put your feet up. The designer should deliver on brief and should be continually in touch with you, showing you how everything's progressing. There should be at least one in-progress meeting. So again, face-to-face, Skype, Google Hangouts, just to keep you updated and make sure everything's on the right track. Depending on the infographic you're creating, and obviously there's quite a wide choice here, the turnaround should be about 2 to 5 working days, something like that. And bear in mind the designer will be using software that you don't have, so you won't be able to edit the document yourself, so you'll need to rely on them. Now I've created my infographic, what do I do with it? We don't want it to gather dust, so use it wherever and however you can. Put it on your website, link to it from Twitter, create a display panel, stick your poster on the wall, postcard, fold out pocket versions, get it on your client intranet and in their offices, and just get it out there and done. And do try and think about how you're going to use it to begin with, because you don't want to create a very complex, small set font infographic and then find, actually, I just want it printed at A4 in a magazine so the top text is illegible. So really think about it to begin with. So essentially that's a rough and very quick introduction to how to create an infographic. So I just wonder, does anyone have any questions off the back of that, please?